There's a war happening right now, but you won't see it on the news. You won't hear gunfire. You won't see armies marching. This war is silent, invisible, and most people don't even know they're losing it. It's the war for wealth, for position, for control. And the winners? They never fire a single shot. Sun Tzu wrote The Art of War over 2,000 years ago. He wasn't just teaching military strategy. He was teaching the principles of conflict itself. How to win before the battle begins. How to conquer without fighting. How to dominate so completely that your opponent surrenders without resistance. The rich understand this. They've internalized it. While everyone else is fighting, they're positioning. While everyone else is competing, they're creating monopolies. While everyone else is working harder, they're engineering systems that make work optional. This is Sun Tzu's war without battle. And by the end of this, you'll understand exactly how it works. Sun Tzu said, "The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting." Let that penetrate. Without fighting. Not through force, not through confrontation, but through positioning so superior that resistance becomes pointless. Most people think wealth is a competition. They think you have to outwork, outgrind, out-hustle everyone around you. They think success means entering the arena and beating everyone else bloody. That's not strategy. That's desperation. The rich don't compete. They create conditions where competition becomes irrelevant. They build moats. They establish positions. They own the infrastructure. And by the time everyone else realizes what happened, the game is already over. Think about it. When Amazon dominated online retail, they didn't just compete with bookstores. They built the entire logistics infrastructure. They controlled the platform. They owned the distribution. By the time competitors woke up, Amazon wasn't just ahead. They owned the road everyone else had to drive on. That's war without battle. That's winning before the fight begins. Here's what Sun Tzu understood that most people miss. Every battle is won or lost before it starts. The outcome is determined by positioning, by preparation, by the landscape itself. The actual fighting? That's just the reveal of who prepared better. The rich operate from this principle. They don't wait until they need money to start building wealth systems. They don't wait until they're in crisis to develop skill. They don't wait until opportunity appears to position themselves. They prepare in silence, in darkness, in obscurity. And when the moment arrives, they don't fight for victory. They simply collect it. Look at how wealth actually transfers. It doesn't go to the loudest person. It doesn't go to the hardest worker. It goes to the person who owns the choke point, the bottleneck, the essential position that cannot be bypassed. Sun Tzu called this ground. He categorized terrain into types, each with its own strategic implications. Some ground is easy to take but hard to hold. Some ground is defensible but limiting. And then there's what he called focal ground, the positions that everyone must pass through, that control everything around them. The wealthy occupy focal ground. They own the platforms, the patents, the distribution networks, the attention channels. They position themselves at the intersection of need and supply, and once they're there, everyone else has to go through them. Know your enemy, and know yourself, and in 100 battles you will never be in danger. This is perhaps Sun Tzu's most famous principle, and it's tragically misunderstood by most people. They think it means understand your competition, study the market, know the trends, but that's surface level. What Sun Tzu really meant was this: understand the fundamental forces at play, understand human psychology, understand incentive structures, understand what people actually want versus what they say they want. The rich are students of human nature. They study desire, fear, vanity, insecurity, status anxiety. They understand that money doesn't flow to the most deserving. It flows along the paths of human emotion and psychological need. Why do luxury brands exist? Not because their products are materially superior, because they fulfill a psychological need for status differentiation. The wealthy understood this. They built entire industries around human insecurity. Why does real estate in certain locations cost exponentially more than functionally identical properties elsewhere? Because humans are tribal. They want proximity to perceived power and success. The wealthy understood this. They bought the geography before everyone else realized its value. Why do people pay premium prices for convenience? Because time is the ultimate scarcity, and decision fatigue is real. The wealthy understood this. They built businesses that eliminate friction. This is knowing your enemy, not the person, the psychology, the pattern, the principle. And knowing yourself? That's even more critical. Most people are utterly blind to their own weaknesses. They confuse activity with progress. They mistake busyness for importance. They trade time for money without ever questioning if there's a better exchange rate. The wealthy conduct ruthless self-audits. They identify their own inefficiencies, their cognitive biases, their time leaks, their emotional vulnerabilities, and they systematically eliminate them or compensate for them. Sun Tzu wrote, "If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles." The rich aren't fighting 100 battles. They've eliminated 99 of them through positioning, and the one battle they do fight, they've already won before anyone else shows up. Now let's talk about something Sun Tzu emphasized that most people ignore entirely: deception and misdirection. All warfare is based on deception. When you're strong, appear weak. When you're near, appear far. When you're attacking, appear to be defending. The entire game is information control. The rich understand this deeply. They don't broadcast their moves. They don't announce their strategy. They don't reveal their full position until it's too late for anyone to counter. While everyone else is posting their goals on social media, live streaming their journey, announcing their next business venture, the wealthy are moving in silence. They're acquiring assets quietly. They're building infrastructure invisibly. They're positioning for the future while everyone else is performing for the present. This isn't dishonesty. This is strategy. Information is leverage. The moment you reveal your hand, you lose negotiating power. The moment you announce your intentions, you invite competition and resistance. Think about how major acquisitions happen. The deal is done behind closed doors. Terms are negotiated in private. And by the time the public hears about it, it's already final. There's no battle because there was no announcement of war. The wealthy operate in stealth mode. They test markets quietly. They build prototypes privately. They secure partnerships discreetly. And when they finally reveal what they've built, it's complete, functional, and unstoppable. Sun Tzu also understood something profound about resources. The skillful commander does not raise a second levy. Neither are his supply wagons loaded more than twice. Translation: efficiency is survival. Waste is death. Every resource must be maximized. Every action must serve multiple purposes. The rich are pathologically efficient. Not busy, efficient. There's a difference. Busy people fill time with activity. Efficient people eliminate unnecessary activity entirely. They ask, what's the minimum viable action that produces the maximum result? What can be automated? What can be delegated? What can be eliminated? What creates leverage? This is why the wealthy invest in systems, not hours. They build processes that scale. They create assets that generate returns without ongoing input. They structure deals where they profit regardless of outcome. One contract that pays residuals for 10 years is more valuable than 10 years of hourly labor. One system that generates passive cash flow is more valuable than a high salary. One strategic partnership is more valuable than 1,000 cold calls. The poor trade time for money on a one-to-one basis. The rich engineer scenarios where one unit of input generates infinite units of output. Let's go deeper into positioning. Sun Tzu wrote extensively about terrain and its strategic implications. He understood that where you fight matters more than how you fight. Ground on which we can only be saved from destruction by fighting without delay is desperate ground. The rich never occupy desperate ground. They never put themselves in positions where they must fight or die. They always maintain optionality. This is why the wealthy maintain cash reserves, why they diversify, why they build redundancy into their systems. Not because they're fearful, but because desperation eliminates strategic flexibility. When you're desperate, you accept bad deals. You compromise your principle. You sacrifice long-term position for short-term survival. The wealthy never let themselves get cornered. They position on what Sun Tzu called easy ground, terrain that favors them, where retreat is possible, where multiple options exist. They maintain the ability to pivot, to wait, to strike only when conditions are optimal. This brings us to timing. Sun Tzu was obsessed with timing. There are not more than 5 musical notes, yet the combinations of these give rise to more melodies than can ever be heard. There are not more than 5 primary colors, yet in combination they produce more hues than can ever be seen. The elements are simple. The timing creates infinite possibility. The rich understand seasonal thinking. They recognize cycles. They know when to plant and when to harvest. They understand that wealth accumulation has rhythms, patterns, optimal moments. They buy assets when everyone else is fearful and prices are depressed. They sell when euphoria peaks and buyers are irrational. They launch products when cultural moments align. They enter markets when infrastructure exists, but competition hasn't saturated yet. This isn't luck. This is pattern recognition. This is studying cycles. This is patience. Most people operate on arbitrary timelines. They need results now. They want immediate gratification. They judge success by monthly metrics. The wealthy think in decades. They plant trees they'll never sit under. They build foundations for empires their grandchildren will inherit. Opportunities multiply as they are seized. This is perhaps Sun Tzu's most potent wealth principle. Success is not linear. It's exponential. But only for those who understand how to convert momentum into compounding advantage. The rich don't celebrate victories, they exploit them. One success becomes the platform for the next. One relationship opens 10 doors. One piece of leverage multiplies into systematic advantage. They're not starting from zero with each new venture. They're building on accumulated capital, financial, social, intellectual, reputational. Each win raises their baseline. Each position strengthens their next position. This is why the wealth gap accelerates. Not because the rich work harder as they get richer, because their advantages compound. Their network effects multiply. Their access increases. Their cost of capital decreases. Their margin of error expands. Meanwhile, most people reset to zero with each new job, each new project, each new attempt. They're not accumulating, they're repeating. Sun Tzu wrote, "In the midst of chaos there is also opportunity." The wealthy don't fear disruption, they position for it. They understand that every market shift, every crisis, every technological change creates a redistribution of wealth and power. And those who prepared, those who positioned, those who maintained flexibility, they're the ones who collect. Think about every major economic crisis, 2008, 2020, every recession in history. What happens? The unprepared lose everything. The wealthy, they buy assets at discount prices. They acquire competitors who couldn't survive. They consolidate market share. This isn't exploitation. This is preparation meeting opportunity. While everyone else was spending and overextending during the boom, the wealthy were building reserves, maintaining liquidity, staying lean and flexible. Sun Tzu called this formlessness, like water, taking the shape of the container, flowing around obstacles, finding the path of least resistance. The rigid break. The flexible survive, and dominate. The wealthy are formless. They're not emotionally attached to specific methods. They don't have egos about their way. They adapt, they pivot, they abandon sinking ships without hesitation. Now let's talk about something uncomfortable. Sun Tzu understood that victory requires ruthlessness. Not cruelty, but the absence of sentimentality. Regard your soldiers as your children, and they will follow you into the deepest valleys. Look on them as your own beloved sons, and they will stand by you even unto death. However, if you are indulgent but unable to make them carry out orders, if you love them but cannot impose discipline, if they are disorderly and you cannot control them, they are like spoiled children. They are useless. The wealthy are not cruel to people, but they're ruthless about standards, about execution, about result. They eliminate what doesn't work. They cut losses quickly. They don't throw good money after bad. Most people are too sentimental. They stay in bad relationships because they've invested time. They hold losing investments because they can't admit the mistake. They keep unproductive employees because firing is uncomfortable. The wealthy optimize relentlessly. What's not working? Eliminate it. Who's not performing? Replace them. What's dragging down returns? Exit it. This isn't personal. This is structural. Systems require optimization. Tolerance for mediocrity is the death of excellence. Sun Tzu also understood the power of intelligence. Now, the reason the enlightened prince and the wise general conquer the enemy whenever they move, and their achievements surpass those of ordinary men, is foreknowledge. Information is the ultimate advantage. The wealthy invest enormous resources in gathering information. They pay for research. They maintain networks that feed them insights. They hire consultants and advisors. They attend conferences. They cultivate relationships with insiders. They know what's coming before it arrives. They understand market movements before they happen. They position before the crowd realizes what's valuable. This is why insider networks matter. Not because of illegal activity, but because concentrated expertise and shared knowledge creates informational advantage. The wealthy talk to each other. They share insight. They collaborate on pattern recognition. Meanwhile, most people are consuming free content, getting their information from social media, learning from those who have never achieved what they claim to teach. The wealthy pay for proprietary information. They cultivate unique sources. They develop pattern recognition abilities that others lack. Let me address something directly. Some people will hear this and think it's cold, calculating, manipulative. They'll say this is treating life like a game, treating people like pieces to move. Here's the truth. Life is already a game. You didn't design the rules, but you're playing whether you like it or not. The only question is whether you play consciously or unconsciously, strategically or reactively, with intention or by accident. Sun Tzu didn't invent warfare. He simply observed it and documented the patterns of victory and defeat. The rich didn't invent the wealth game. They simply learned its mechanics while everyone else pretended the game didn't exist. You can choose to be naive. You can choose to believe that good intentions and hard work automatically lead to prosperity. You can choose to ignore strategy and positioning and leverage. But the game continues. The wealth continues to concentrate. The positions continue to solidify. And those who refuse to see the board will continue to be pieces moved by players they never see. So what's the practical application? How do you implement Sun Tzu's principles in your own wealth building? First, stop fighting unnecessary battles. Every hour you spend in direct competition with someone else is an hour you're not spending building unique positioning. Find the uncontested ground. Identify the needs nobody's serving. Position where others aren't looking. Second, know the landscape. Study the mechanics of wealth in your specific domain. Understand who controls what. Where does capital flow? What are the choke points? What infrastructure exists? What's emerging? Third, build before you need. Don't wait until you're desperate for money to build income streams. Don't wait until you're in crisis to develop skills. Don't wait until opportunity appears to build the capacity to seize it. Fourth, move in silence. Stop announcing your plans. Stop seeking validation for your strategy. Stop posting your every move. Build in private. Reveal when complete. Fifth, engineer advantage. What structural elements can you control? What relationships can you cultivate? What skills can you develop that create asymmetric returns? What systems can you build that generate results without ongoing effort? Sixth, maintain optionality. Never put yourself in desperate positions. Keep reserves. Maintain flexibility. Preserve the ability to wait for optimal timing. Seventh, study relentlessly. Information is advantage. Pattern recognition is power. Understanding human psychology is wealth. Read, observe, learn. Connect dots others miss. Sun Tzu's final principle. The general who advances without seeking fame and retreats without fearing disgrace, whose only thought is to protect his people and serve his sovereign, is the jewel of the kingdom. The truly wealthy don't need external validation. They don't require applause. They're not performing for an audience. They're building for legacy, for sovereignty, for the satisfaction of mastery itself. This is the ultimate freedom. Not needing approval, not fearing judgment, operating from internal metrics rather than external validation. The wealthy have already won the only game that matters: control over their own time, their own decisions, their own existence. Everything else is just score. Here's what most people will never understand. The war for wealth isn't fought with effort. It's fought with intelligence. It's not about working harder. It's about positioning smarter. Sun Tzu won battles before they began. The wealthy accumulate resources before they need them. They build systems before crisis demands it. They position before opportunity appears. By the time everyone else sees what happened, the war is already over. There was no battle, because there was no contest. The outcome was determined by preparation, by positioning, by strategic superiority so complete that resistance was pointless. This is the quiet strategy of the rich: war without battle, victory without fighting, wealth without struggle. Not because they're special, not because they're lucky, because they learned what Sun Tzu taught thousands of years ago. The supreme art of war is to subdue the enemy without fighting. And the supreme art of wealth, to accumulate resources so systematically, so strategically, so inevitably, that poverty never even gets close enough to fight. So the question isn't whether the game exists. The question is, are you playing or are you being played? Are you positioning or are you reacting? Are you building systems or are you trapped in them? Are you seeing the board or are you just a piece someone else is moving? The wealthy aren't smarter than you. They just learned the rules you were never taught. They applied principles that have worked for thousands of years while everyone else chased novelty and gimmicks. Sun Tzu's wisdom isn't ancient, it's eternal. The mechanics of strategic superiority don't change. Only the battlefield changes. And right now, the battlefield is wealth, is time, is sovereignty, is control over your own existence. The war is happening whether you acknowledge it or not. The only question is whether you'll fight it consciously or remain unconscious until you've already lost. The quiet strategy of the rich is available to anyone willing to study it. The patterns are visible to anyone willing to see them. The positioning is accessible to anyone willing to be patient, strategic, and ruthless about their own optimization. But most people won't. They'll keep fighting battles that don't need to be fought. They'll keep competing in arenas that are already dominated. They'll keep working harder instead of positioning smarter. And the quiet war will continue. Wealth will continue to concentrate. Power will continue to compound. And those who understood Sun Tzu will continue to win without anyone noticing there was ever a battle at all.